Hey, what's up, nerds? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. I'm Shane, and today I got something special for you. We're going to be going over a deck tech for a legendary creature that came out in Duskmourn that I fell in love with pretty much the minute that I saw it. And I'm talking about Kona Rescue Beastie. It is an awesome mono green deck. Let's just jump into it. But before we jump into all the awesome cards in this deck, I just wanted to talk about the budget and kind of what I was aiming for. This isn't going to be what I would call a budget deck. It's also not going to be a CEDH deck, nothing extremely powerful. But I was kind of aiming for around a 300 to 350-ish range. So I know that's kind of where I like to have my deck sit. So that's what I did for this one. So let's just jump into the deck and let's talk about Kona and what this deck wants to do. Kona Rescue Beastie is 3 and a green for a 4/3 legendary creature beast survivor. It has survival. It says at the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona Rescue Beastie is tapped, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. That is a pretty strong piece of text right there. The idea of this deck is that you're going to be playing the Beastie, tapping the Beastie, either attacking someone that hopefully won't block and kill it, or just using other pieces in the deck to tap the card, and then you can just play whatever you want, regardless of how big it is, regardless of anything. There's really no stipulation to this card, and it's pretty amazing. First of all, let's talk about some of the creatures that I put in this deck. Specifically, let's talk about some of the mana dorks. Creatures that are going to tap for mana for us. We are a mono green deck, and we do have some pretty big spells. So hopefully we're just putting them onto the battlefield with Kona. But if we do have to hard cast some stuff, these are going to be really important for us. First up, Birds of Paradise. 1 green mana for a 0/1 bird. Got flying, and it says you can tap it, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Straightforward, great card. I'm also putting in Circles of Dream Druid. 3 green pips for a 2/1 elf druid. It has tap, add green for each creature you control. A little bit better ramp there. You got some creatures going on. Taps for more than 1 green. Pretty good. Land of War Elves is also in the deck. 1 green mana for a 1/1 elf. You can tap it, add a green to your mana pool. Very straightforward. Very good. The Light of the Halfling is in the deck. 1 green mana for a 1/2 Halfling Citizen. You could tap it for colorless, or you could tap it, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast legendary spells, and that spell can't be countered. That's really good if you're trying to cast your commander or anything else that you don't want countered that's legendary. Really good mana dork. Fanatic of Ronus is in here. 1 and a green. A 1/4 Snake Druid. You could tap it, add a green. It also has Ferocious. You could tap it, add 4 green. Activate only if you control a creature with 4 or greater power. It has Eternalize for 2 and 2 green. This is really good for us. We have a lot of big creatures that have 4 or greater. I mean, Kona's 4, so Fanatic of Ronus can tap for 4 pretty often. This last mana dork is a little different. It's more than just a mana dork. That's Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. It's 1 and 2 green for a 2/3 Elf Scout. It says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. Then you can pay green, tap it, add X mana of any combination of colors where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You have a lot of big stuff in this deck, or I guess I have a lot of big stuff in this deck. We probably are going to have the biggest thing on the field, so we're going to be taking advantage of drawing. And then this thing can tap and give us a huge number of mana. This is a really good card. This next group of creatures are also mana dorks, but they're a little different, because Kona does want to be tapped. So these creatures are going to help tap Kona, which is very important. Very good cards here. This first one is Sentinel Stalwart. 1 green mana for a 1/1 Elf Druid Soldier. It says you can tap it, tap an untapped artifact or creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. Again, it's a mana dork, but it also taps Kona for us. Really important. Loam Dryad is 1 green mana for a 1/2 Dryad Horror. It also says you can tap it and tap an untapped creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Once again, mana dork that helps us tap Kona. Fantastic. Jaspera Sentinel is 1 green mana for a 1/2 Elf Rogue. It has Reach, and it says you can tap it, tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. I feel like a broken record, but this thing is helping us tap Kona, which is what we want to do. Cerulean Caretaker is 1 green mana for a 0/3 Dryad. Got Defender. It also says that you can tap it, tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. You see a theme? And then this last one is a little different, but still really good. From the new set, Duskmourn. Enduring Vitality, 1 and 2 green for a 3/3 Elk Glimmer. It has Vigilance. It also says creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. When this dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control as an enchantment. Really good. Comes in as a creature, that's cool. And then if it dies, you get it again, and it's a little harder to kill because now it's an enchantment. And this is tapping Kona. These next couple of creatures also help us tap Kona, then do something else. And then there's also a doubler in there, so we'll find out. But the first is Fear of Exposure. 2 and a green for a 5/4 Nightmare. It says as an additional cost to cast this spell, tap 2 untapped creatures and or lands you control. It has Trample. That's pretty good, so you can tap a land and Kona for this. It's a really good way to tap Kona. Similarly, Tyvar the Pummeler is 1 and 2 green for a 3/3 Alpha Warrior. It says that I can tap another untapped creature you control. Tyvar the Pummeler gains indestructible to end a turn. Tap it. It also has pay 3 and 2 green. Creatures you control get +X till end a turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. This thing is pulling double weight here. It's helping us tap Kona and also protecting itself. And then it's kind of just making our team real big later. Like it's doing a lot. Both these creatures also were in Duskmourn, which is cool flavor. That's me with Kona. And then the last one that I wanted to throw in here in this little set is Roaming Throne. Fantastic card. 4 generic mana for an artifact creature golem. It's got Ward 2. Says as it enters the battlefield, choose creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to the other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So you can name Beastie or Survivor, but I don't know, it doesn't really matter. But either way, when Kona triggers and Roaming Throws on the field, you'll get to dump 2 things now, which is pretty good. All right, those are all the mana dorks and tappers and whatnot that helps us get Kona going. But let's get into the stuff that we want to be dumping from our hand now, at least in the creature department. The first one is Archetype of Endurance. It's 6 and 2 green for a 6/5 boar. It says creatures you control have hexproof. It also says creatures your opponents control lose hexproof and can't gain hexproof. That second part, I mean, it could be pretty relevant, you never know. But giving all of your stuff hexproof, really good. I like this card a lot. Avenger of Zendikar is in the deck. 5 and 2 green for a 5/5 elemental. It says when it enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 plant creature token for each land you control. It also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature you control. This card could be a finisher for you for sure. Later in the game, all those lands you have, you're going to make a bunch of 0/1s, and then every land you put after that just bumps them up. Maybe if it won't win the game, it at least will slow you down from dying. Like, I just love the versatility of this card, and it's so good. Blightsteel Colossus is in my deck. Watch out. 12 mana for an 11/11 golem. Trample, Infect, Indestructible. If Blightsteel Colossus will be put into your graveyard from anywhere, reveal it, then shuffle it into your library. That's just pretty good if it dies, but either way, just being able to drop an 11/11 Trample, Infect, Indestructible. People are going to need to respond to this very quickly, or you're just going to start one-shotting people, because Infect damage is still 10 in EDH. Isn't that dumb? I'm putting in Carnage Tyrant in my deck. 4 and 2 green for a 7/6 dinosaur. It can't be countered, and it has Trample and Hexproof. And that's just pretty good. So in case you have to cast it, it's got can't be countered. And then just Trample Hexproof. Pretty good for a big beater. I like it. Craterhoof Behemoth. You probably thought it was going to be in here. It's in here. 5 and 3 green for a 5/5 beast. It has haste, and it says when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain Trample and +X till end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Craterhoof probably isn't going to be one of your targets for Kona, just because you're going to want to be casting it before combat to hopefully maybe win the game or something. So you probably don't want to drop it with Kona because that'll be on your second main. But, you know, worst case scenario, I guess. But no, you're probably just keeping this for a finisher. Galta Stampeding Tyrant is in my deck. 5 and 3 green for a 12/12 Elder Dragon. It has Trample, and it says when it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So it's kind of just like Kona, but on steroids. This is one of those cards where you're kind of like, how greedy do I want to be? How much do I want to feed into this board wipe? You could play a couple, you could play them all. It's up to you. Kodama of the East Trees in the deck. 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 Spirit. It has Reach, and it says whenever a permanent you control enters, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent with equal or lesser mana value from your hand onto the battlefield. So once again, you could put this out with Kona, and then every time you put something out with Kona, you can put some out again. So it's like you're getting 2. It's just really good. It's like the synergy here, man. It's crazy. A big scary one here, Nyxbloom Ancient. 4 and 3 green for a 5/5 elemental. It has trample. It says if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times that much mana. Yeah, that one's going to be good for you. Because like I said, the deck is a bit heavy. I mean, you have early stuff. You saw me talk about all those mana dorks, but the deck has a lot of big spells. And if you can't be dropping them all with Kona, this will super help you cast all those spells. Oron Frostfangs in the deck. 3 and 2 green for a 2/6 snake. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is just in here to ensure that if you do have to tap an attack with Kona, hopefully no one blocks it, because they don't want to block a Death Toucher. And then you'll draw some cards. But even if you don't want to do this with Kona, just all your creatures tapping and attacking with Death Touch and giving you cards. Really good with a deck that cares about attacking. I put in one of the Osiers. Osier Chasm, Deepest Growth. 3 and 2 green for a 6/5 God. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or land card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of the random order, and then when it dies, return it to the battlefield, tapped and transformed under its owner's control. It'll be a land at that point. This is a pretty good card. I like it. I like that it helps you dig, and then I like that it doesn't always have to go away. You can just come back, be some land, and then it'll come back again. Really good card. We're not done. We got more big stuff. I'm also putting in Soul of the Harvest. 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 elemental. It has trample. It says whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. I love the fact that a lot of this stuff, or all of this stuff, says when it enters the battlefield, not anything about casting. Because like I said, we're predominantly just want to be dumping stuff onto our battlefield. So this will just, every time you dump a new thing, trigger, draw a card. Pretty good. Terastodon's in my deck. 6 and 2 green for a 9/9 elephant. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. For each permanent put into the graveyard this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Hopefully what you're destroying is a lot better than a 3/3 elephant. And then our stuff is really big, so let them have 3/3 elephants. We don't care. Tyrannix Rex is in this deck. 4 and 3 green for an 8/8 Phyrexian dinosaur. This spell can't be countered, and it has trample, toxic 4, ward 4, and haste. Lot going on here. I really like this card. It's a newer one from Phyrexia, but it's still really good. I know it doesn't have infect, but toxic 4, that's nothing to scoff at. It's got a lot of good stuff going on here. Uvenwald Hydra is in my deck. 4 and 2 green for a Star Hydra. It's got reach, and it says its power and toughness is each equal to the number of lands you control. It also says when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. That's pretty good in my opinion. This thing can get really big, and when it enters, it just grabbing any land is pretty good. We do have a few utility lands we care about, so I like this card a lot. Vorinclex Voice of Hunger is in here. 6 and 2 green for a 7/6. Got trample, and it says whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land would produce. Then it also says something very mean. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during the untap step. This is going to definitely incentivize your opponents to not tap, which is kind of dumb because they're going to want to tap. Like, this is just a really mean card. Your opponents are going to be a little upset at you with this one, but you're going to be stoked. So who cares? I really like this next card. Vaultborn Tyrant. 5 and 2 green for a 6/6 dinosaur. It says whenever it or another creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life and you draw a card. And it also says when it dies, if it's not a token, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to other types. So this thing is really cool. It gets to stick around, draw a lot of cards from all of our big boys. And then when it dies, you're just going to get it again. I mean, unless it gets exiled, but no one plays exile, right? Bird and Sun's Avatar's in the deck. 5 and 2 green for a 5/5 dinosaur avatar. It says whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. We have some big stuff entering. We could be gaining a lot of life here. Another fantastic dinosaur. I put Vigor into my deck. It's 3 and 3 green for a 6/6 elemental incarnation. It has trample. It says if damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. And when it is put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it and put it into owner's library. With this on the field, we're not really getting dealt damage anymore. We're just growing. So that could be a problem for your opponents, but fantastic for us. Woodfall Primus is in the deck for 5 and 3 green. The 6/6 Tree Folk Shaman. It's got trample, and it says when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent. It also has persist, and if you don't remember what persist is, whenever this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counter on it, return it to the battlefield under your control with a -1/-1 counter on it. So you just die and then you get it again at least once. This is a pretty cool card. I like that it's just kind of destroying something for you, and it's a big beater that you get twice. Really good. And then lastly, for our big beaters, I'm putting in Worldspine Worm. 8 and 3 green for a 15/15 worm. It's got trample, and it says when it dies, create 3 5/5 green worm creature tokens with trample. When Worldspire Worm is put into the graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. This is just a big beater that has evasion with trample that'll turn into more beaters. Like, this is a really good card for us if we're not casting it. So those are all the creatures we put in. Now let's move over to some sorceries, which is predominantly just ramp. So let's just go through them real quick. I put in Cultivate for 2 and a green. It's just a sorcery that searches the library for 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then 1 in your hand, and then shuffle. Pretty good. I'm sure everyone's heard of this one. I also put in Nature's Lore. 1 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a forest card, put it on into play, then shuffle your library. Rampant Growth. 1 and a green. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. 3 Visits. 1 and a green. Sorcery. Search your library for a forest card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. This next one isn't a ramp spell, but it's pulling double duty in this deck. Coordinated Clobbering is 1 green mana for a sorcery. It says tap 1 or 2 target untapped creatures you control. They each deal damage equal to their power to target creature and opponent controls. So hopefully they're gonna gang up, kill something, and then if it's Kona, you just help tap Kona. But once again, it's pulling double duty here. Pretty good card. And it's from Duskmourn, so it's another little flavor splash from the new set. Those are all the sorceries I put in the deck. Let's just run through some instants I put in the deck now. The first is Archdruid's Charm. 3 green mana for an instant. Choose 1. Search your library for a creature or a land card. Reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield. Tap if it's a land card. Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Or put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Or exile target artifact or enchantment. I just like this card in mono green because it's super flexible. You're either ramping if you need to ramp, grabbing a creature if you need that creature, making something big and killing a creature if you need that, or just straight up killing something, enchantment or artifact related. Pretty good. Another nice little kill spell here, Beast Within. 2 and a green for an instant. Destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. This just kills anything, and I love that. Whatever's the problem, it's gone. They get a beast, but like I said, we're gonna have really big creatures, so we don't care. I put in Crop Rotation for 1 green mana. It's an instant. Has an additional cost to cast Crop Rotation. Sacrifice a land. Search your library for a land card. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. You'll see when we get to the lands, but there are a couple lands that we care about that do some stuff, and this just is land card. It doesn't say basic or anything, so you just go get any land that you need, and that's good. Sacrifice a forest, who cares? Gather Courage is also in the deck. 1 green mana, instant. It has Convoke, and it says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. That could be a cool little pump. It also has Convoke, so if you need to tap Kona, another way to tap Kona. So it's, again, these cards that are kind of pulling double duty, really cool in this deck. Heroic Intervention, 1 and a green, instant. It says permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Just a really good way to make sure that your stuff isn't going anywhere. Some people want to kill your stuff, mainly Kona, because how powerful they are. This is just a way to be like, don't look at Kona, please. Return of the Wild Speaker is 4 and a green for an instant. It says choose 1. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control, or non-human creatures you control get +3/+2 till end of turn. Both modes are great here. Either we're pumping up our team and winning, or we're drawing our cards to win. So, I mean, really good card in either stage of the game. I like it. Other surprises in the deck for 1 green mana. It's an instant. That's a spree. So you could pay +2, mill 4 cards. You may put 2 creature or land cards from among them into your hand. You could pay 4 and a green on top of that. You may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. And you could pay 1 extra. Creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof indestructible till end of turn. So this is just like a kind of redundant Heroic Intervention. A lot of the stuff you want to save is power 4 or greater. But then you can also just put more stuff on the battlefield. So if Kona is kind of expensive because they've died a couple times, now you still have a way to sneak out those really big creatures. This card is just pulling a lot of weight. Another instant I'm putting in is Tameo Safekeeping. 1 green mana for an instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. You may gain 2 life. You might see a theme here. We really want to protect Kona, because people aren't going to want Kona to be alive. So yeah, you're going to need some protection. Speaking of protection, Veil of Summer, 1 green mana for an instant. It says draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. It says you and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. Again, just another good way to get hexproof. Don't be killing my stuff. But also drawing cards if someone casts a spell. Like, this card's just very flexible and really good. I like it. Let's power through some artifacts real quick. This first group, all going to be pretty familiar. These are just mana rocks. So Arcane Signet's going in the deck, Belwar Stone's going in the deck, Mind Stone's going in the deck, Soul Ring's going in the deck, and Thought Vessel's going in the deck. These are all just really good mana rocks that I kind of want to put in a lot of decks, and I put it in this one too. I also put in Emerald Medallion for 2 mana. It's an artifact. Green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. We have a lot of big spells. This is going to help. Head Shredder is 2 and 2 green for a 5/5 vehicle. Whenever it attacks, you may mill 2 cards. And whenever 1 or more land cards is put onto the graveyard from their library, put them onto the battlefield tapped with a crew cost of 1. This is a really, really good ramp spell that also taps Kona. I can't get over these crew cards. Like, we have a couple things at crew that just pull so much double duty. And this is one of them. Portal to Phyrexia is 9 mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexia in addition to its other types. Kona just says put a permanent. So if you have this in your hand, you can just drop Portal to Phyrexia from Kona. Really, really good. Smuggler's Copter is also in the deck. 2 mana for an artifact vehicle. It has flying, and it says when it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Crew cost of 1. Smuggler's Copter is just going to give us a lot of card advantage and help us tap Kona. I love, love, love these vehicles. Honor Worn Shaku is 3 mana for an artifact. It can tap for a colorless. And it also says tap and untap a legendary permanent you control. Untap this. So you could tap this for mana. Then you can tap Kona, untap this. All these cards that we're going to be talking about in this next section help us tap Kona and then also do other stuff. And the other stuff is mainly make mana. But it's really good. Paradise Mantle is 0 mana for an artifact equipment. It says equipped creature has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Cost of 1. Put it on the Kona. Tap Kona. Boom, problem solved. Relic of Legends is 3 mana for an artifact. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Or you can tap and untap legendary creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color. Once again, really good. And then just good old Springleaf Drum. 1 mana. Artifact. You could tap it to tap and untap creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color. All these things are just helping us tap Kona. And we couldn't be more happy. I put a couple enchantments in this deck. And let's just go through them real quick. Crippleth 1 and a green for an enchantment. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Hey, we want to tap Kona. I don't know if you got that memo, but we're tapping Kona. Guardian Project is 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control, or another card in your graveyard, draw a card. That's really cool. We're playing EDH. Singleton format. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards. I also put in Tribute of the World Tree. 3 green mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. If its power is 3 or greater, otherwise put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. All of our big stuff is just going to draw us a card, and all of our little dorks are just going to get bigger. Sign me up. I like it. It's pretty good. This next one is a little different. It's not just an enchantment, it's an enchantment aura. Kenrith Transformation. Enchant creature. Whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card. And enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green elk creature token with base power and toughness 3/3. So I hope you didn't want to play your commander. Or I hope that when you did play your commander, you really wanted an elk. That's what I just did. Lastly, we are a monocolored deck, so we don't have a ton of crazy lands to throw in this deck. But these are pretty important. The first is Castle Garenbrig. It's a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest. You can tap it for a green, or you can tap 2 and 2 green and tap the land. Add 6 green, spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. It's a good thing that we have pretty big creatures we want to cast, so Castle Garenbrig just helps us cast those if we need to. Holdout Settlement is fantastic in this deck. It's a land that taps for a colorless, or you can tap it and tap an untap creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. Now it's a land that helps you tap Kona. Can't explain how important these kind of cards are in Kona. And speaking of another card that helps tap Kona, Scene of the Crime. Artifact land, it's a clue. Scene of the Crime enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap it, tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color, and then also you can pay to sacrifice Scene of the Crime, draw a card. So, I mean, you could draw a card if you need to, but both these last 2 cards, they're fantastic because they help us tap Kona right away. The last land that'll help us tap Kona is the Shire, a legendary land that says it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. You can tap it for a green, or you can pay 1 and a green, tap it, tap an untapped creature you control, create a food token. This one isn't going to help us create mana for tapping Kona. You're going to get a food, but either way, we don't really care. We just want to tap Kona. This is great. I put it in War Room, really good land. You can tap it for colorless, or you can pay 3, tap it, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's identity, draw a card, or monocolored. So guess what? 1 life, draw a card. I like that. That's a good rate. We do have a lot of big beaters we want to connect with, so Rogue's Passage is kind of important. It's a land that taps for colorless, or you can pay 4 and tap it. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Just really good to make sure that you do some killing. And then just to round it out, we have 27 forests in this deck. So it's a monocolored deck. It's all good. And that is my Kona deck. I love this card. The minute it was released, or I guess spoiled or anything, I knew I wanted to build it. I just like the strategy. I don't even have a mono green deck. This is going to be my first mono green deck, and I can't be more happy about it. I like the idea of just dumping big things. I get that you're probably going to be a bit of a problem at the table, so just make sure that you're not doing it too, like, flashy, you know? If you can, I guess. We have big things, but typically players don't like when other players do things for free. So, you know, expect some heat and play accordingly. But with that, let me know what you guys think. Leave me a comment. Did I miss something? Did you build Kona a little different? I want to hear about it. I want to see maybe there's something I can put in mind that I didn't think about. So let me know. This is not, you know, the end-all be-all build. It's just my opinion. So I would love to hear about what you guys are building. In the description, you can find a link to this whole deck. So if you want to play test it and check it out, you'll find the link down there. Also down in the description, you'll find a link to all of our social medias. That's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's all going to be @GuysThatMagic. You'll also find a link to our Patreon down there. Everyone on screen right now, those are all of our Patreon members. If you want to see what they're seeing, which is not here on YouTube, you can go find it in the link down below. We have exclusive deck techs, we have gameplays. We do a lot of cool stuff over there, so maybe consider subscribing if you want to go over there. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel to not miss out on any upcoming content. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!